Do you ever feel like you're about as smart as Derek Zoolander after a lobotomy?
What is this?
A center for ants? The center has to be at least 3 times bigger than this.
I've been there. One time I was at a wedding where they had a bubble exit, and it was a windy day, so when I blew the bubbles, not only did the bubbles blow into my eyes, but I had a jerk reaction and threw the whole thing of bubbles in my face. So I have what you might call an expertise in idiocy. I may be a few fries short of a Happy Meal, but despite the odds, I've learned me a thing or two over the years about how to become hella smart and how to do that without reading, because I think books are overrated and you should probably stop reading as much as you do. And I'm going to make a whole video on that at some point. But first, I want to share the single most important thing you can do to exponentially increase your intelligence, and that is to spend time with people that are significantly different than you. Even more particularly, spend time with people that you have significant disagreements with. I grew up like in a relatively tight southern bubble in Arkansas. Bubbles, just like the wedding bubbles. Sorry, I'm this word association. Pretty much everyone I spent a lot of time around growing up was middle class or upper class white Christians. My high school had something like 1,600 students, and there was not a single person that I knew of who was openly gay.
What's the name?
Lance.
Listen here, Lance. Lance. What the f did I just hear, Lance?
Did you say Lance?
No. That sounded like Lance.
No, I said Nance.
Yeah, it was a big deal if you heard a rumor that someone was gay, and this is in like 2010. Also, there were probably only like 10 kids who didn't go to church and 10 kids who were black, and I'm of course over-exaggerating a bit. There was a large Hispanic population, but for one, ethnic diversity and gender diversity and all that stuff is important, but I do think it can be a bit overrated when compared to ideological diversity, and that really is the main problem with my upbringing that I see. Like, everyone I was around pretty well had the same religious views, political views, moral views, so there was hardly ever a challenge to the way that you thought. The internet was a thing, but it wasn't at all the powerhouse that it is today. There was YouTube and Facebook, but Twitter was just starting to get popular, and there wasn't even Instagram, and TikTok was still a decade away. And YouTube and Facebook were not at all the search engine. Well, Facebook isn't, but YouTube, there's a lot of info there now. It was not like that in the early days. So if you weren't often exposed to different beliefs, you just had your own beliefs reinforced by your aunt's Facebook posts that were in all caps, of course, about how Obama was the Antichrist and vaccines would make you gay. And I've always been an empathetic person, so I did try to hang out with different kinds of people as I went through high school, but it was always with the intention to evangelize to them. So it's not like I was actually considering their thoughts and opinions. The classic, are you actually listening? Or are you just waiting to respond? It hadn't even crossed my mind to genuinely reflect on the points people made to challenge my beliefs. It was just in one ear, out the other, and then telling them, that's cool, bro. Did you know that you're wrong? I was not actually listening. And I think a lot of people interact with the world that way, even if it's just their political views they want to evangelize about. Most people don't ever stop and ask the million-dollar question, what if I'm wrong? And that ends up making you look really dumb and ignorant if you're not sincerely critical of your own worldview, because being dumb in the most literal sense just means being ignorant and narrow-minded. If you look up the word dumb in the dictionary, it's just a page that lists out the members of Congress. Kidding. The dictionary says being dumb is just a lacking intelligence. It's more an absence of something rather than an actual thing, kind of like light and dark. So if being dumb is just a lack of being open-minded, being smart is a matter of putting yourself around all kinds of people and ideas that will actually challenge you and call you out on your errors. Like, lack of being around diverse people and thoughts is the cap that keeps most people at their current intelligence level. So once you take that off, the sky's the limit. And so a good way to put this into practice is to think of one of the values you hold most sacred, then spend some time with people who don't share that same value. So say you're deepest value is your relationship with God. Like, sit down and ask an atheist questions about why they don't believe and actually listen to their story. Or maybe one of your core values is a woman's right to choose. Well, maybe sit down with a pro-lifer who believes that life starts at conception and just hear out their reasoning. Like, even if the logic doesn't follow for you like all the way, you can at least say, oh, I see how they could think that, and even though I disagree, I've got some new information to broaden my perspective, and more importantly, like, broaden my empathy and compassion, because those are components of true intelligence. By the way, I'm Andrew, and this is Oakley, and we're currently accepting donations in the form of subscribes or patting us on the head and telling us how good of a boy we are, which, on the topic of intelligence, we joke a lot in our family about how Oakley isn't quite the sharpest light bulb in the crayon box, you might say, but he really does have a heart of gold, and that's what matters. Isn't that right, Oakley? Back to where we were at. I'd give a caveat that you don't have to spend time with different people if they aren't respectful. Like, you can have wildly different values, but still have a conversation with dignity and good faith. So if you're not going to have good faith, or the person you're talking to isn't going to have good faith, there's not much use having a conversation. And actually being around flesh and blood people is ideal, but you can even practice this through documentaries or podcasts or whatever. Like, I don't know, say back to the abortion thing, but maybe say you're a pro-lifer. Well, look up a person's story of why they had an abortion and just listen without judging, and try to put yourself in their shoes and imagine how they were thinking and feeling about the subject at that time. Because again, all this can be done without books, just real world experience or YouTube or podcasts or whatever. Because back to my high school days, but that entire season of life, I was a huge reader. I read a ton, but somehow I wasn't any smarter for it because I was only interacting with the information in the world that was already affirming my viewpoints. But then in college, I was really interested in religion, so I started going to a different religious group every other weekend, and I started hanging out with the imam at the mosque and going to some of the Islamic campus events, and I went to a chocolate and wine and dancing night at the synagogue, and I'd go to prayer hour at the local Hindu temple, and I even turned the tables on the Jehovah's Witnesses and knocked on the front door and asked if I could join in on some of the meetings. And this whole process really blew my mind, because I realized not only did I have a lack of knowledge about these different groups, but the knowledge I previously thought I had was just totally wrong. So just stop yourself for a minute and ask, when was a time that I significantly changed the way I viewed something because I spent time with different kinds of people and actually listened to them? And feel free to share some of those stories down below in the comments. And if you can't think of a time, start today. You wouldn't believe how much your intelligence will skyrocket if you just start spending more time around people that make you just a little bit uncomfortable. Like, their ideas or their morals or even their culture just makes you a bit on edge. And when you get those ants in your pants, that's a sign that it's time to lean in and ask more questions. My brother got me these logical fallacy cards years back to go through, and they've been a really helpful way for me to approach different kinds of people and different kinds of information, and hopefully a more humble and receptive way. So I'll leave a link to those below. And anyway, please subscribe and support the channel so that Oakley can pay off his student loans from Yale. Here's a slideshow of him as a reward for making it to the end of the video.